this was 1970. We lived at Mutford's Farm, which is in Hertfordshire. We lived on Mutford's Farm, and there's two houses next to each other, and then there's a farm track that goes up to the farm. It's about 300 yards, 400 yards long, going down to where the houses are, and then there's a bank, and then over the bank you drop down to a fence into the field there. We've been living there for about 6 months, a year, something like that. We didn't live there much longer than that, but that length of time. So I've been there a long time. And because the chap next door, he had a van, so he was into vans. I'm trying to think of his name. I'll think of it, don't worry.
I'm going to boil the kettle.
So he had a van, so he managed to get a good deal on this van. As kids, loved it. So we were coming down the track, down to the house, and instead of got down to the very last bit, we slowed back down, and then the last bit, all of a sudden we shot off and we went right over that bank, straight the way down, and through into the field.
You didn't know?
Kids were going, yay! Absolutely loved it. My mum was in shock. She said, I did it again. That's the second time. Instead of putting my foot on the brake, I just pushed it high down on the throttle. And instead of just taking it off straight away, no, she just kept it high down, wondering why it wasn't slowing off or something.
What are your toys?
The toys we had. Yeah. I remember the first toys that I could remember, obviously the first toys I remember we had, and this was when we lived in North Wales, at Cork, which was a little cottage, farm cottage with a water wheel on the side that used to provide the electricity. So they're cool. It was fantastic fun. I remember at Christmas, my mum and dad, because that's when I was living with my father when we lived there, they brought me a fort, and an American fort with 1800s. That's what the cavalry Indians.
Okay.
And this was a cavalry fort. That's better. I had a cavalry fort, and Mark had a castle.
Oh my God!
And then a drawbridge and everything. And we had hundreds of cowboys, hundreds of Indians. I had artillery people, the cannons and stuff, and all that stuff. I had loads of horses, and then you had all the Indians. So I had loads of Indians and stuff. Those were our best toys. We loved those. We always had cat guns, so we always had double holsters. So we always had a cowboy hat. And the waistcoat. Always. That's what, because everything on the television was cowboy and Indian films. So that's what we really enjoyed. And catapults was the other one. We really liked catapults. I remember we lived in the countryside. Because the only time I never lived in the countryside was when we lived in Derby. And believe me, that was a shock. But luckily, across the road where carriage and wagons used to be, which still is, if you went across the bridge and at the other side, there was a cemetery, and then if you went from that, there was fields and stuff before you could see more houses in the distance. So that was quite cool. So we liked that, but that was about it. So we lived in a terraced house, and obviously Mark and myself, we're used to being in the countryside. We're used to throwing stones, and we're used to stubble fights. I'll tell you about that in another episode. Stubble fights, all these different things that we really like doing. So obviously, we had catapults, and we also had a huge marble collection.
That's nice.
Hundreds of marbles. So put a marble in the catapult, and believe me, that goes a long way. Very, very powerful. So I know I'm not condoning this. I can't say that, can I? No, I can't tell that story. I can't. Can I tell that story? I'm going to put this in here, and then we're going to decide afterwards whether this is going to be the film. Mark and I would get bored. So our bedroom window upstairs looked over the terrace house at the back of us. Our garden, their garden, their house. So 100 yards away is their house, the back of the house, like ours. They're backed into each other. So we used to open the window, which is the old sash ones, you know, with the weights at the side. So you put the window up like this, and then put a marble. I'm laughing because as kids it was funny. Put a marble in there and then not aim at anything, just go like that, pull it all the way back and fire it, and then wait. Nothing. Then Mark would have a go and fire and wait. And then you hear a and then you look across the street for somebody's window, and then you quit it. You would quit then. No, it's just you didn't do that all the time. No, if you hit one, that was it. That was enough. You quit it. But we did that. That's the honest truth. So we had cat pots. And
So you don't know whose window is that?
New. Sorry. But also the other one when they did come into really good for defence, because obviously this one particular time, Mark and I, we hadn't been in Derby for very long. Probably a couple of weeks, and you'd get groups of kids, like 5, 6 kids, because they're all mates and stuff, go around like in a gang. Not a gang, just groups of kids, because you've still got quite. No, you got a nice shirt. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, people will watch that and thinking, look, she's gone to sleep. He's a boring old bugger, isn't he? Eh? Yeah, now he's well first sleep. Why are you talking about it? God, his stories are rubbish.
I'm so tired. Oh my God.
So these groups of kids just go around. At this particular time, Mark and I, we didn't have cat bots with us because we didn't carry it around with us. You didn't need to until this particular time, and we put up a good fight. But anyway, we came off the worst from them, so we had to run away and stuff like that. So from that point onwards, we always carried marbles, at least 30 marbles each, and our cat bots in our back pockets. So they were covered, you couldn't see. This particular time, there must have been about 10 of them. And
10 kids?
Yeah, with this particular group that had already, so they thought we were easy pickings again. They forgot all about the cat pots with marbles. Now, if you look to where we used to live in Grosvenor Street in Derby, terrace houses. Now, in between these houses, there's an archway where you can walk through the archway to go to the back of the houses. So all the houses are joined except for an archway. Every other house is an archway. So you go down through the archway and left-hand side house, right-hand side house, down to the bottom of the alleyway. It turns left or right, and then you go down that alleyway to so you got alleyway, 1, 2 houses, 1, 2 houses. So you go alleyway for those two, us, and then alleyway for the other ones. So you go down the alleyway to get to their houses. So they started running towards us. So we got out our catapults and started just firing at them now. So as soon as a couple of them got hit, obviously they know they're getting hit. This is really hurt. So they're almost screaming. So they realise that, and then they see what we're doing. So they suddenly realise that. So they run down an alleyway. So of course we're standing at the entrance, so we're all down the alleyway, and these walls are about, when you're kids, these walls, I suppose they're about 6 foot, but for a kid that must be about, it seems like 8 foot tall. So they're trying to get over this, so they're trying to help each other get over it as we're still firing at them. I'll tell you now, we never ever ever had another problem with any kids ever again in Derby. Because as soon as they saw us, they'd just stay on the other side of the road. Because they knew we weren't going to be mucking around. Forget knives and stuff, we got a cat pot. I'm going to pick you up before you ever get anywhere near enough to do that. And you've got to remember, we've lived in the countryside for years. I think the first time I had a cat pot, I must have been about 4. So we made our own cat pots. We always had cat pots. So you could really hit things. So quite a good shot with a cat pot. So, and somebody as big as a kid, I'm going to miss. If I want to hit their head, I'll hit their head. So you're not gonna run at me because I've only got to hit you one in the head. You're going down. So after that, never had a problem, which was good. Something else. So yeah, I remember that. Cars. Go back to cars. Now what next? Because I don't want to miss any out. Because there was like I said, the Ford Populars, a few Humbers. We had Corsair. I can't remember the others. Then we had the van. Like I said, we had this van. This is now I'm 7 now. This is when we lived at Buffett. We had another one there, and my mum lent it to somebody, and they blew the engine up because they didn't put any oil in it. We told them that it uses a bit of oil, which made it explode a bit. So, and the bloody thing blew up. But that was a Humber something or other, something. I can't remember exactly what it was. Something like a big thing. My mum used to let us drive it around the fields. That's how the first time I learned to drive. I was 6 years of age when we lived in Yeldersley. I used to drive when they cut the grass, cut the corn, cut the wheat, wheat, barley. Anyway, cereals in the summertime. When the stubble was there, obviously my mum used to let us drive around the fields. And that was the first time I ever drove was 6. And the first time I drove a tractor when I was 7. Always lived on farms. So.
Wow, it smells nice.
Then. So now
what is you sharing at the moment?
I'm still talking about cars, but I've shared the bit about with the kids going down the alleyway and screaming. The screams, I tell you now, we had to leave it in the end because of the screams. Somebody was going to report us to the police because they sounded like they were being murdered. And I suppose in a way they were, because you get hit by a marble coming out of a cattle, and these are Marlboro cows, the real pucker ones. We brought on go down the end of the street, turn right, and then where the main road was, just there, was a shop that sold all sorts of stuff, and it sold these, because the first time we ever saw them, these Marlboro catapults, Mark and I were like in awe. This was like the best thing we'd ever seen in our lives. This is a real genuine Marlboro catapult with the white elastic, not the grey. That was for sissies. And even though I was 7, I could only just pull it back. Believe me, I used to work my way up so I could. We loved it, yeah. So, such a cool memory. Remember the first time Mark and I were, wow, we've got to save our pocket money to buy one of those.